This video is going to talk a little bit about concreteness and specificity in creative nonfiction. It's going to repeat some of the things that we already talked about in poetry and fiction, but apply them a little bit differently. Then we'll talk a little bit about writing about vice, and finally about timeliness and authenticity. So we're going to cover a bunch of topics from this past week in one, hopefully, short video. Start out. Concreteness and specificity in nonfiction deals mostly with showing the reader your personal experience. So what you want to do, again, when you're relating your personal experience, we talked about this in previous videos, is engage your reader. You want to bring them in to your own experience and make that feel real to them. You want them to feel emotionally involved in whatever happened to you or whatever led you to decide that this was what you wanted to write about. And the way to do that is through relating vivid, specific details. You want to appeal to the senses. And the most obvious one is always going to be sight. For people who are sighted, that is the one that people go to, but also involve them in everything. Smells are very closely related to memory. I don't know if I've mentioned that before, but if you can bring people into that place by just appealing to as many of the senses as you can, you're going to have an easier time getting your reader emotionally involved. And when you're doing this, it's good to start out by writing everything that you can remember and then go back through what you've written and try to figure out which details are going to be the most important to get your reader emotional and involved in the situation, get your reader on your side. So for example, if I were going to write an essay about the time I cut across multiple lanes of traffic to get to a Krispy Kreme because I really wanted donuts, I might include the 12 missed calls from my boss, which I note because I glanced at my phone in a traffic jam because I'm a jerk. Stuck in traffic, my stomach is growling as loud as the car's engine is rumbling. I might talk about the woman in front of me who was on her phone and she had kids in the back seat who were fighting with each other. Now looking back, that's amusing. It wasn't amusing at the time. Talk about the flatness of my wallet. Talk about the donut lover's card that I had tucked in the sun visor. You know, I might talk about all of those things. And all of that is going to help, hopefully, bring the reader into my experience, help them feel as hungry as I feel. I might go even deeper and talk about the physical sensation of an empty stomach and how it's growling, how it feels to be stuck in traffic when I'm late to work and I need food. And specifically, there's a Krispy Kreme that has suddenly caught my attention and makes me want to go and get one. All right, so all of these things can help bring the reader in. This actually leads into the next section, which is writing about vice. Part of the reason that I want to talk about this is that a lot of people, when they're writing about themselves, they try to make themselves seem as good as possible. But we talked already about charitable honesty, about being truthful about what is going on with all of the people involved in this nonfiction piece that you're writing about. And honestly, people like to read about bad behavior. If I were to write about cutting across multiple lanes of traffic to go to a Krispy Kreme, even though it's dangerous, it's a bad thing to do, I could probably get my audience on board with that move. In Bissell's essay on doing cocaine and playing Grand Theft Auto, he is able to describe cocaine in a way that makes it, terrifying, but also kind of appealing. One of the things here that I note is that it's important to make the downsides clear, or you risk sounding like you're recommending it. It's hard to make cutting across multiple lanes of traffic in a traffic jam, it's hard to make that sound like a good idea, I think. I would have to do it You know, I would have to play up my hunger as much as possible to let people realize why I did that thing. And Bissell is very good in his essay, I think, about demonstrating the problems of cocaine use and the difficulties of it. So whatever you're going to do, if you're going to be honest about yourself, you can share your bad behavior. You have to let people know why you did it and also why it was bad, why they should not do that thing themselves, or why you learn not to do it, something like that. Okay. Let's move on to talk about timeliness and authenticity. So whenever you're writing, you want people to have a reason for reading it, have a reason for understanding why you're bringing it up. This isn't always the case, but like, for example, the David Foster Wallace piece. You know, food festivals are always going to happen. Some people are always going to be miserable there. David Foster Wallace was always miserable at the food festivals he went to. But in other cases, there is a question of timeliness. Bissell's essay on cocaine and Grand Theft Auto is timely because people are more and more starting to recognize that game playing, that escaping into video games can be an addiction, as serious as doing drugs. N.K. Jemisin's essay on when is Black Future Month is timely because when she wrote it, this was a time when the science fiction and fantasy community of which she is a part were having a lot of problems about representation in their awards ceremonies. Groups of writers just split off from the majority of science fiction and fantasy writing awards groups and made their own awards where they didn't have to recognize any authors who were not straight white men. So in some cases, you may not need to do this, but in cases where you are writing something where timeliness and authenticity matters, you can go ahead and show your emotion. Don't overstate it. You don't want to just rant the entire time, although that is something that I'm asking you to do this week in your short writing exercise. But share with people why you're writing about it and why you're writing about it now. Why is it personal for you? And this goes back to the vivid details. If you share your emotion with people, they are more likely to feel that emotion alongside you. Sometimes you have to be explicit about this. You might have to say, I feel angry because, but other times you can get this tone across in your writing. And this is something that we've talked about in poetry and in fiction. Word choice matters. The way that you convey your thoughts and feelings and the way you describe a scene to your reader, that's going to help get your emotion across. So think about these things when you're writing your creative nonfiction. This is just the last slide, and it's talking about the short writing exercise, which has been posted to Blackboard. What I want you to do is share with your reader why you want to write about this thing right now. And if it isn't something that is particularly timely, that's okay. Just tell your reader why this is something that bubbled to the top of your brain when you were thinking about what to write about. Why is it resonating with you right now? And then once you share with a sympathetic reader why you're going to write this thing right now, I want you to rant about it. Let all your emotions loose. Let them all go out onto the page and just write for as long as the mood takes you. Don't worry about spelling or punctuation or writing complete sentences or anything like that. Just have a train of thought flow out onto the page. It's okay if you don't end up using any of this in your final draft, but it's something that you might find helpful in sharing your emotion with your reader later. The word choices that you use in describing what happened to you or describing what is happening in the world, those things might be something that you pull out and use later on. All right, that's it. As always, let me know if you have any questions.